Ready when you are, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. Welcome everybody to the penultimate Planning Committee meeting of KBC. Just to remind everybody, especially if you're watching on YouTube, that this is a virtual meeting, so bear with us if we have any technical issues, and we'll try and sort them out as soon as possible. As per usual, the debates will follow the usual format of officers' updates, the officers' report. Any speakers will speak who are present on the list. Members will then debate, and the chair will restate the recommendations to be voted on. We'll get a seconder and a proposer for the recommendation. We'll have a vote that Eden will do for us, and then I'll reiterate the results of the vote. Eden, can you do a register of those attending, please?
Certainly, Chair. So if we start with the councillors, Councillor Thurland.
Here.
Councillor Titcombe. Councillor Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Adams. Councillor Mitchell.
Here.
Councillor O'Hara. Councillor Howes.
Here.
And Councillor Morton.
Present.
And then officers' side, we have Emma Granger from Legal.
Present.
Angela Brockett from Development Services.
Yeah.
Carol Grant from Development Services. And James Wilson from Development Services.
Present.
As well as myself and Callum Galuzzo from Democratic Services.
Thank you, Eden. Do we have any apologies tonight?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Greg? You're on mute, councillor.
No, sorry, Chair. Oh, come on. Sorry about that. Yes, I'm ward councillor for All Saints Ward, and I'd like to say something on 5.2, if I may, Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, do I have to declare it's in my ward as well?
No, you don't have to declare if it's in your ward. Any others? No? Excellent. Minutes of the meeting from the 2nd of February. Is everyone happy they're a true record?
Chair, may I just say, I'm not on there, but I obviously did speak, but I'm not noted as present.
Eden, can you amend the attendees, please? Okay. There are no urgent items. We've only got one speaker tonight for item 5.2, so we'll do them in order as they appear. Just to remind everybody, 5.1 and 5.4 have been removed from tonight's meeting. So if we start with 5.2, Acton House, Montague Street.
Okay, so I've got no update on this one. It is as it's seen on both the agenda and on the plans in front of you. So a quick recap. The application is for 24 flats and 2 retail units and comprises 18 2-bedroom flats and 6 1-bedroom flats. The proposal also includes a section 106, which is in draft form, for monies for education, library services and public open space. It also includes a commuted sum in lieu of 1 affordable unit on the site. The building that is proposed will replace a 1970s part 2-storey, part single-storey building. I think there's a photo of it, Eden, somewhere. Oh, we'll quickly go through all that. Okay, so yeah, so that's the site. To the north on Eden Street, that is the conservation area. The property isn't in the conservation area, and to the south, the conservation area runs along Montague Street. I think it ends sort of parallel at the public house, which is the Swan Public House. I'm not quite sure where it ends, but I do think that's about it. So next slide, please. So there's the site plan again. Next slide, please. So this is the existing building. It's a 1970s part 2-story, part single-story building. There's 2 retail units on the Montague Street facade, and the last known use of the first floor were for offices and a training centre, and that's now vacant. One of the retail units is vacant and the other one is in use as a Polish supermarket. To the side and the rear was a furniture warehouse, and again that use has ceased and that unit is currently vacant. Has been marketed but to no avail. Next slide please. This is demolition plan, so you can see that the complete warehouse, so in pink or red, that's going to be completely demolished, and then the green and the yellow show the areas that are to be retained. I think it says on there, there's a few sort of internal walls and things are going to be knocked out as well, but basically they're keeping the front half of the building. Next slide, please. So you've here now got in front of you the view. The top view is the view that sort of, it's not internal, but it's a view that sort of overlooks down between Eden Street and Montague Street westwards. So it goes over the old bowling green and the backs of the dwellings and shop units between Montague Street and Eden Street. To the bottom of the screen is the south elevation, which is the elevation facing Montague Street. You can see the retail units on the ground floor and the flats above. The flats above on that elevation all have their own balconies, so they've all got some private amenity space, as have the ones above on the west side. Next slide, please. And then you've got the east elevation, which is Eskdale Road elevation, sorry, Eskdale Street elevation. That faces onto a single-story factory unit, I believe. Those units have got Juliet balconies only. And then on the north elevation, these are the elevation facing Eden Street, which is the conservation area. And you can see there that there's flats on the first and second floors. And then on the bottom floor, there is the cycle storage, covered cycle storage area, the access into the internal car parking area, and an access into the bin store. Next slide, please. Then we've got the floor plans. So this is the ground floor. Out of 22 flats, there are 22, out of 22 flats, there's 21 parking spaces. They are allocated spaces. So there will be 3, I've completely confused you. It's 24 flats and there is 21 parking spaces. So 3 of the flats have unallocated parking. The rest of the units will be allocated a parking space. However, there are at the moment 3 accesses, 3 loading bays into the warehouse at the rear, and 2 of those are to be reinstated. So there will be additional on-street parking for everybody around the immediate area, but there is additional parking to be made on street. There is cycle spaces sufficient for the units. Then there's the bin store, as you can see, to the left and the right of the access. Next slide, please. And this is the first floor layout. As you can see, there are some balconies along the south elevation. All of the flats have meet the current internal space standards. And you can see that on the top right-hand side of the screen, how big each unit is and how many people are expected to live in them. Next slide, please. And again, you've got the second floor with the floor areas. You can note that there's balconies on the west facing elevation there, as well as on the south elevation. And again, we've got the individual floor spaces and the amount of people who would be living in the flats, maximum amount of people allowed to live in the flats at that space. Next slide, please. So here is a artist's impression of what the building will look like on the Eden Street elevation. This was requested by Kettering Civic Society. They objected to the scheme and they said that it would have an impact on the conservation area. The row of houses on the right-hand side of the screen, which is in Eden Street, is in the conservation area, and they are actually specifically mentioned in the conservation area appraisal. And so the design of the new building reflects the scale and massing of those properties, reflecting those gable ends and the difference in the materials with some render, which isn't apparent on those dwellings there, but it is further down along the street, I believe. Next slide, please. Now, I do apologise for the poor quality of these photos in advance. They are a little bit blurry, so please don't think that you need new glasses or the screen needs adjusting. This is a view down Eden Street. So on the right, you've got the row of houses in the conservation area, and to the left, you can just see the loading bay, which will for the warehouse that's already there, then, and that loading bay will become the area where the access is into the car park. Immediately adjacent to them, you can see some gates, some black iron gates. They lead into a yard behind those houses that is used for commercial purposes. I think there's some small units, workshops there. So that is a commercial yard that adjoins this site. Next slide, please. Again, another blurry photo, but this shows that rear elevation on Eden Street a little bit more in detail. So you've got the no parking sign on the loading bay, which will remain, and then you've got two other loading bays there, and then you can see those gates into that courtyard. And there's a little single-story building that you can see sort of way back, and that is one of the commercial units in that yard. Next slide, please. Again, sorry, there seems to be an awful lot of blurry pictures of the rear of the building. So I think I've already explained what that one is. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. This is the front, so this is Montague Street. You can see it's a building that's not really got much architectural merit. I won't say none, because it must have had something in its day, but it's a poor state and it doesn't really add anything to the street scene. Next slide, please. And then I think this might be the final photo that's showing the elevation on Eskdale Street. So you've got the front building, the 1970s front building with the shop and the offices training centre above, and then the Sawtooth building to the rear is the furniture warehouse, which is now also closed down. I think that's it with the photos. Oh, another one. So yeah, so again, Eskdale Street, a better photo of the rear warehouse, which is to be demolished in its entirety. So just to recap on this, the site is within the Kettering town boundary, and therefore as a residential scheme, it is considered by officers as a sustainable development, which is also reflected in policy. The proposal comprises on-site parking for 21 out of the 24 flats, which will be allocated rather than a free-for-all. And additionally, 2 of the 3 existing entrances are to be blocked up, which will potentially free some on-street parking. And also there is on-site covered secure cycle storage within the site. 14 of the 22 flats have balconies, and there is provision being made for for monies to public open space. And all flats meet the current internal space standards. And I think that'd be over to you, Chair, or any questions that anyone's got for me.
Okay.
That's it.
So we've got our one and only speaker tonight, Val
Okay.
Colby. So if we could let Val into the meeting.
Going through now, Chair.
Hello, Val, are you there? You're on mute at the moment.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you.
You've got
Can you see
3
me at
minutes
all?
whenever you're ready.
Pardon?
You've got 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okie doke. Can you see me at all?
No,
No, I don't know why that is. Sorry about that.
that's all right.
Let me just see if I can move
Oh, there you
something.
go.
Ah, there I am. Mhm. Thank you. You probably prefer to see my face. Right, I shall start. Thank you very much. My name is Val Colby and I'm from Berries as a planning consultant, and I speak on behalf of the applicant in favour of this application. Councillors, you will be aware that this site lies on the edge of Kettering Town Centre Conservation Area, but is outside the conservation area, the crossroads on the main route into the town. Whilst the ground floor shop has been operating, the remaining parts of the building, that is the offices above the shop and the old Ashton Pine warehouse behind, have been vacant for some time. The site is currently a most certainly underutilised site in a highly sustainable location. The very thing national planning policy is strongly encouraging us to reuse and redevelop. In addition, the appearance of the existing building itself is not attractive at a prominent corner site of the town centre. Our proposal is partly to demolish the building and revamp the shop frontage. The building will then provide 24 flats, 18 two-bedroom and 6 one-bedroom, ground floor shop, 21 car parking spaces, an enclosed cycle store for 25 cycles, and an enclosed bin store for both the residential properties and the shop. Bins are presently kept on the street. 12 of the flats have balconies. As councillors will know, residential use in the town centre is an appropriate use as set out in both your local plan policies and the National Planning Policy Framework. We've worked closely with your officers in formulating this application through an initial pre-application inquiry and by amendments to the application during the course of its consideration. And I would like to thank Carol Grant for her support in this. The result is a redevelopment of the site by a bespoke architect design development, making the best use of the site while also providing a good amount of on-site car parking within a town centre location, as well as contributions to infrastructure provision. Whilst the Kettering Civic Society comment on the effect of the proposed building on the Eden Street dwellings, none of the Eden Street residents have objected to the proposal. You will also note from your officer's report that there are no objections from statutory consultees. It might also be worth pointing out that the office space above the shop has the benefit of permitted development rights for change of use to residential, and this could therefore apply to the 6 flats proposed under this scheme, whilst accepting that any external changes would require consent. Equally, there are permitted development rights for conversion of warehousing to residential, but our scheme clearly is not conversion. It is a replacement building designed to better suit the site and its location. The report before you concludes that the proposal would make a positive contribution to the setting of the conservation area and is consistent in scale and design with the surrounding form. Clearly, I agree with your officer's view. As a local resident myself, I would be delighted to see this part of the town improved, and I hope you will approve this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Callum, we'll just put you back into the waiting room. You can carry on watching on YouTube if you want.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, councillors. So we've got Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. You know, there's parts of this that I actually really like. I completely agree. It needs redevelopment, that building. It is looking very old and dated. The upstairs hasn't been used in ages, and it would be great to see something there. I actually, I applaud the car parking spaces that are being built inside it as well. We see so many applications where there is just no parking available whatsoever, and I think that they have succeeded in doing this. Just A few questions I do have, Ru. Carol, you said that there will be extra on-street parking because of it's the back entrances, what do you call them, loading bays, will create more on-street parking. Does that mean the legal rights to the double yellows are going to be removed around that area? Because that's where they are currently. The second thing is the balconies. What are the balconies going to be overlooking? Is it kind of both sides? So are the balconies looking out onto Montague Street, or are they looking out onto Eden Street, or is it a mixture of both? And the third thing that I do have an issue with is the amount of cars that are going to be coming out onto, which is what is now a two-way system, so it's no longer one way, that road can be bottlenecked at the best of times. So I do worry about more cars coming out of Eden Street itself, which is a very small, very small street. And I know people struggle to turn right into Eden Street, and also when they come out of it. Thank you.
Okay, can I answer that, Chair? Can I answer Councillor Edwards? Okay, so the extra on-street parking, I'm not sure about those double yellow lines. Where highways have said that it would free up car parking. So I would assume then there would be some sort of agreement entered into with the Highways Authority and the applicants. But that's so potentially there would be extra on-street parking if those double yellow lines were removed. I did know actually on Eskdale Street that there was all double yellow lines. I'm not sure if they go all the way around onto Eden Street as well, all the way along. You're nodding, so I'm assuming that they do. So yes, so although potentially there could be additional on-street parking, that would have to be something that is negotiated between the applicant and the Highways Authority. But the curbs would need to be reinstated anyway, if there's dropped curbs where those loading bays are. The balconies, so apologies, I must say this now before I forget. I told you originally that 14 of the 22 flats had balconies. And then Val said there was 12. So while she was talking, I was counting up, and I double counted that flats 13 and flats 24 have 2 balconies each rather than 1 balcony. So I was counting all the balconies, whereas I should have counted the flats with the balconies. So 12 of the 22 have them, and they are facing on the south side on the first and second floors onto Montague Street, and on the west side they're facing over the parking area, which is covered, so there is a roof on that, and then they look out onto Eden, not onto Eden Street, but in the middle area between Eden Street and Montague Street, so the backs of the gardens and that service yard that I pointed out where the gates are. So they look westwards, but not actually onto a street. I think it might be easier if we brought up the site plan. Eden, is that possible? So yeah, so if you look out on, so west is onto the left-hand side of the screen. So you're looking out onto a blank area shown on the plan, which is the service yard for those so for a little single-story building that's towards the bottom end of that blank area. And then you've got the gardens of the row terrace of houses on Eden Street, and then the bowling green. And then sort of beyond towards Montague House. So that's the outlook from those balconies. I think that was the end of your questions, Councillor Edwards, I believe.
Okay, next we've got Councillor Tickham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I am in favour of this. The design is sympathetic to the area. My only point is the comments made by the Thamptonshire Police. All Saints Board, unfortunately, has one of the worst records of criminal activity, and well, it's the worst in the town, I do believe, at the moment. But looking on to page 28, crime of forest, can we say that what they've commented on, will that be adopted by the developers, or can we insist on some of this? That is my concern. Other than that, it looks a good design, and yes, I'm in favour of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to comment on that, Carol? Or
Yeah, I'm just just whizzing up and down with my mouse to that point. Can I come back on that while I find it, if the
Okay.
next council wants to speak?
okay, Councillor Thurland.
Yeah, my concerns are the pre-application advice was 3 years ago, and I know things have changed, but I can only assume another lot of application advice was taken. But now these flats can accommodate, and they actually on the plans and on the application, 73 people. And 73 people. Much is made of the fact that the retail shops aren't viable. Well, just round the corner is another set of flats, and they had retail shops, and they couldn't let those as well for over 3 years. So I'm not sure how these retail flats are going to go. I'm not sure whether we're having 25 or 28 cycle spaces, but for 73 people, I think that's woefully inadequate. There is a lot of antisocial behaviour around this area because of the flats and the parking. I'm not sure where, if you say that those yellow lines are going, you're only going to get 2 cars there though, because you've got to have some splays for those cars to get in and out. So if you've got cars parked on both sides of Eden Street, I don't think that's going to be very helpful for safety. Will you allow parking permits? Because that's a parking permit area. Because when we passed Imperial Flats, we were told they wouldn't get parking permits. But they do have, which makes it even worse. So that's a couple of issues on that. And we're talking about the Juliet balconies and the other balconies. I'm not sure if there's families in there, what amenity space you're going to have on a piece of concrete. And if you're talking about they can go to Mill Road, taking children there, it's a long way to walk to Mill Road Park. The Juliet balconies that are going out onto Montague Street, they're going to have double doors to open. The fumes, we talk about the green agenda, and I know Councillor Lee talks about the air pollution and the air quality. But if you're going to have to open your windows onto Montague Street and Estelle Street, I think that's going to be really bad. It says it's conducive to limiting travel by private car because of places of work and sustainable transport options. I don't believe that there are any, not for that amount of people either. The noise that's going to come from those concrete balconies and the Juliet balconies for the people who live in Eden Street, I think is going to be horrendous. And this road is a busy road. It was opened up so that the traffic could go from one side of the town to the other easily. And my goodness, does it go easily from the north to the south of the town, east to west of the town. It says highways say that residential parking and commercial deliveries cannot be made within the same shared space. Now, on the original plan, it shows 3 car parking spaces for the retail area for those shops. Now, either the need for retail areas magically disappeared, but I'm not so sure that some of those won't be back for the use of those units. So the emergency exit, I think, for those shops are going to go into the car parking area. The refuse bins, again, are under the flats, but not only that, but you've now got 4 huge commercial waste bins going under those flats as well. And the waste bins are right at the end of the car park. Now, these shops are open till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. That is going to be so noisy for the people that are going to live there. And also it says, and I know you're going to say this is building regs, but the application says that the building needs render, timber cladding and brick slips to reduce the load of the existing structure. So are we not over developing this? The police have recommended CCTV. I don't think it should be a like to have, I think it should be a must. And condition 9 asks for the refuse collection and cycle rack should be in place prior to the first occupation. Can we ensure that that's done? Because Imperial Place has been up and running for some like 3 years and they still haven't got their cycle racks. So I really do think this is overdevelopment for Eden Street being blighted as it is from the other set of flats, and it's only going to compound the issues that are already there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Carol, did you want to come back on any of that?
Yeah, so if I can just come back on Councillor Titcomb's comments. So the Northamptonshire Police comments, the external openings, door sets, windows, etc., and the ground floor glazing and the doors and windows meeting the approved document queue of building regulations, they are, as you rightly point out, are building regs issues. So although we can put an informative on and say that this is what we would like you to adhere to, we can't, as planning, we can't actually make them do that, but building regs can. So they are, those things are all covered. Sorry, and the same goes with the bin and cycle store doors. So the security rating is all building regs. The deep overhanging enclosed porch areas, the overhanging porch area is actually on the supermarket part of the building, which is to remain. So that's the only part of the building that's not going to be demolished. So we can't design that out because that's an existing part of the building. So we have to learn to live with that. Obviously, CCTV, if the shop wanted to put CCTV up, I'm sure that they can. There's also permitted development rights for CCTV. But if the applicant wanted to put CCTV up once the building was occupied, then you know that again, that is something that they can do if they wish to. Going back to Councillor Thurland's comments, the shops, the new shop, there is a condition, putting a restrictive condition on times on that until 6 p.m, I believe, or 7 p.m. I'm not quite sure. We'll just check that. So yes, we have restricted the hours on that particular shop. They could come back at some point if they wanted to, and ask for a new application for the shop, you know, to remove that condition or to vary that condition. We would have to consider it, but with residential above, it's unlikely that we're going to grant permission for something to open, you know, up to 11 or 12 p.m. With the supermarket that's already there, we cannot put a restriction on that because it's an existing shop. So basically, whatever that has got on it, and it's unlikely that it's got any restrictive hours condition on it, with the building being so old. Unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do about that one. The waste bins, the applicants have agreed to have a private company come and empty the waste bins. So the commercial waste bins would be emptied, I don't know, possibly every day or 3 times a week, whatever the agreement is. So if the shop closes at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m, the waste bins from the shops aren't going to be emptied at 2 or 3 a.m. So, you know, I think that's an issue that is unlikely to happen. There's also a roof on the car parking, so there is that sound barrier between the actual residential and the car parking area. It's not an open area for the noise to just come up. I take your point about it being a busy road and the balconies. There's not a lot of space, but it's town centre living, and we have got balconies on some of the units. So we have got an element of private amenity space. It's difficult. It's a town centre location. It's difficult trying to get everything that as planners we would possibly want to see on a development, but we have to compromise. And I think the balance here is that we are getting a building there that is pleasant to look at, which is much better than what we've got there already. It's a sustainable development, and it's providing homes for people who need them. And we've provided as much as we possibly can in the constraint site that we've got. So I'm encouraged that I'm getting lots of encouraging words from councillors tonight on something that we've tried really hard to get to be the best scheme that we can for you.
Thank you, Carol.
Chair, the condition for the retail is 6 p.m. Both weekdays and weekends.
Okay.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, can I just say that existing shop is open till what, 3 or 4 in the morning?
Yeah, which
And that's not changed.
Carol pointed out we can't change that.
I know, but we're saying we've got 2 on the other 2 shops, and this one's not.
We've only got 2 shops.
So yeah, and then this one will come back and say, well, this one's got it, so this one's going to have the opening hours.
But they'll need to come through planning. So, Councillor Hara.
Thank you, Chair. I think that the application aesthetically looks fine, but in use, I don't think it will be. I think that there's too much for density of flats in terms of the size of the flats for the amount of people that are going to be living there, for the living space that they've got. I just don't think it's enough, and there isn't any community space whatsoever. Having a balcony is not conducive. What I'm concerned about is that there's a comment here from the Highways Authority saying revised plans have covered the majority of original concerns, therefore no objections subject to conditions. But what were the revised plans in terms of what were their concerns? Because what I can see, you can throw all those cars in there coming out onto a busy 2-way street. And I just think that's an accident waiting to happen, because the egress from the site is not great. You wouldn't have, it's not a decent display there for cars coming in and out. And is it going to be a one-way system? And plus you've got the industrial, well, the shops there as well. So they're going to have deliveries as well. So, you know, you've got a covered parking area. And that then raises another question in terms of security. I think it's imperative the CCTV, if this scheme does go ahead, and better and very, very good lighting so that the CCTV can see everything. But I would warrant that there would need to be some kind of gate on there, because there's too many little areas there that people can just gather in the dark of the night, and goodness knows what could go on in that area. So for me, there's a concern there from Highways that I'm not sure what concerns they had originally, and what if it's covered the majority, what other reservations do we have on there? Is it what I've just mentioned and what other councillors have just mentioned? And again, as I say, the concern is as well for the storage of the waste. Have they got to walk it down there into these great big industrial bins that are stored underneath people's living quarters? You know, we've seen in the news how many times bins have been set on fire, and we've always advocated that we would never have that. And here we are, great big bins underneath people's living quarters. So just think that needs addressing as well, really. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Councillor Howes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, again, I think the design, I mean, it has got its issues, but on balance, you know, it's 100 times better than what's there at the minute. So, you know, I can't really fault that. I mean, again, my only issue is the car parking, which has been mentioned. I mean, I appreciate, you know, we've got in front of us something that the officers are obviously suggesting is legal and recommended, but it you know, it does seem extremely tight, and we're trying to create areas where people can park, and I just think that you're going to get overspill parking, you know, in years to come all over the place, because obviously those flats are not going to provide the 21 spaces, are not going to provide, plus the overspill bit on the road is not going to provide enough. And it's just a shame that we have to accept that. And that's my only comment. Apart from that, sign's great. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Edwards, you had your hand up. Did you want to speak?
I did lower it again, but just a very quick question. So the exit to the car park, that's on the corner of Eden Street, isn't it? That's correct.
The exit to the car park is on Eden Street, not on the corner. The corner area is for the cycle spaces. So the secured cycle spaces, you come in that way. I'm just bringing the plan up. Can you bring the plan up for me, please? The ground floor.
Harold, the cycle spaces are on Montague and Eskdale. It's the rubbish bins that are on Eden and Eskdale.
Next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Yeah, okay. So difficult for me to see this on my iPad. So the main car park, the main entrance into the car park is on Eden Street. So you can see that recessed area, and then there's a little pedestrian door as well going through. Then you've got the cycle parking area is on Eskdale and Eden Street on the corner, as Councillor Thurland correctly pointed out. And then you've got the bin storage on either side of the recessed car parking access. Now, all of this is secure. It's all roller shutters on the bin stores, and there's secure doors on the cycle storage and a roller shutter door for the car parking. So it's as secure as possible to stop anybody from entering if they don't have the keys or the code. So people just off the street, just wandering around looking, you know, for somewhere to go, to cause trouble or whatever, they cannot access it easily. So it is as secure as possible. And the bin storage, yes, it's where it's got to be for it to be collected safely by the management companies who are going to collect it. It can't be right inside, so because there's no way of getting it out onto the refuse lorries. So it's been designed as it is because that's the best way to design it. Just going back to Councillor O'Hara's comments on what the original application was, it was for 28 flats. We've reduced it because you know there simply wasn't enough parking or enough amenities for 28 flats. So this is the push and pull that we've had, and this is why it's taken so long to get to where we are, because we've pretty much worked with the applicant to get the best scheme possible.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, can I just ask Carol, it wasn't asking what the revised plans were, it's what the Highways Authority has said. It's covered the majority of original concerns. What were their concerns?
Carol, you're on mute.
Sorry, I thought I'd done it. So the Highways comments originally said they couldn't accept the application because the 28 apartments, and that there wasn't enough parking, and the servicing area for the commercial element shared access with the private residential uses. But we would have to make we should look at whether or not we felt that that was correct or not. And then they talked about visibility displays as well. So the changes that have been made, they are happy with, or they have no objection to now.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, sorry, I hadn't actually finished. Sorry. So these gates or roller shutters are going to be electric, aren't they? So presumably they either have a passcode or a what do you call it, a PIN keypad to get in and out. If you've got 2 or 3 cars waiting, that's going to cause a bottleneck right on that road, that busy road again, isn't it? So you've got 23 cars. I mean, no, I know not everybody is going to enter that car park all at the same time or leave that car park at the same time, but it's going to cause an issue if they can't get in because of, I don't know, not having the correct code or even just waiting for the doors to open.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I mean that's the same in any site where there is electronic gates to wait to get in. You can, if you're waiting on the side of the road, you're not causing a highway hazard as such. You're not in the middle of the road. You're waiting to get in, so potentially 2 or 3 cars could sort of look like they're parked up waiting to get in. I don't know whether there's any solution to that, because there's always going to be a potential issue that 3 people might want to get in at the same time as somebody's trying to get out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think there is a solution to that. But the problem also then is that you said about on-street parking. So if you're going to put more cars on the street there, you're actually just going to chock-a-block that road with all those cars together.
Yes, I mean there is a point there that and maybe then highways are going to come back and say that the double yellow lines have to stay. Excuse me. So it's an unknown as to whether or not the double yellow lines are going to be removed or not.
Okay. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, funnily enough, I was going to raise the issue about the roller blinds and the traffic having to sit around that area. I mean, that area, even with the amount of people that we've got working from home, not going into businesses, etc., that new road layout is horrendous. And when you get the larger vehicles coming down round that Estelle Street and turning into Montego, I mean, it really is just a traffic nightmare. And so I do have concerns. I suppose the only comment I've got is, what was built in the 70s, we're looking at now and saying how horrific it is. And I just wonder in the future what somebody's going to look at and think, what on earth did they put that amount of flats into that area for? We are getting very, very saturated of flats that I feel that are not that well built, that are not high quality, that are just like tiny living spaces in large blocks. That we seem to be losing on quality. I mean, they've reduced it from 28 to 24. But it seems like all the builders are going for the maximum that they can fit onto the smallest plot of land. That could be a really nice area to develop. It could have less places to live, higher quality, with some amenity space, with somewhere to hang your washing, with somewhere to get a breath of fresh air. Hanging over a balcony in that area is definitely not going to be a breath of fresh air. And I mean, there's just been some recent case law, isn't there, where a family has taken a council to task about making her live in an area and not monitoring the air quality, and our children have ended up suffering with severe asthma. So I get that there's probably not anything in major planning terms, but I just think, really concerned that it's not very good quality in a prime position in the centre of our town.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thurland, is it something new?
Yes, we're talking about turning off of Estelle Street, and Carol was saying you're waiting in the middle of the road. You're only allowed 2 cars to turn right into Eden Street, and coming up to turn left into Eden Street, and if it's chock-a-block, that is where the bottleneck is going to be. The shop, that Polish shop, has a lot of unloading done there, because, and you can see it by all the stuff, all the cardboard that's outside waiting to be collected. So that is not going to help. And if they can't use the car park area because the highways say you shouldn't, but full well they will. And talking about the yellow lines, I asked for those yellow lines to be removed a little while ago, sometime early last year, and they wouldn't. They took away one space at the top of Eden Street near the church, the Eden Church area. They wouldn't take those round the corner. They've done as much as they will do, so we know they won't. You didn't tell me about the permits that were going to be allowed, and you talk about 21 cars, but these are 73 people going to live there. You can't tell me that 52 of those aren't going to have cars. And the people of Eden Street and St Andrews Way are plagued with antisocial behaviour. The Imperial Place flats, the drug dealing that goes on there, and I can just see, like Linda said, we've got all these small flats. We're cramming as many people as we can. There is a policy 8 of the NNJCS and policy 30 that says, yes, we can object to these because it's overcrowding, it's overdevelopment for the amenities of the local people that already live there, with the noise that's going to go on with those flats. And yes, it's nice to have a balcony, but with a balcony brings noise. And also says in the report that having balconies is not the normal thing.
You said this was new stuff. This is a repeat of what you said earlier.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, so no one else to speak. James, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I understand members' kind of concerns about, weighing these benefits and disbenefits of these applications. What I would say is that the difficulty for officers is trying to find a balance whereby these decisions can be retained, locally, so that we have influence over what happens with them. In respect of national policy and also your local plan, we want to see increased densification and higher densities in sustainable locations. So quite rightly in town centres where there's access to public transport, and it doesn't solve the problem of issues around car parking, because that's inherently going to be a problem to overcome. But I think for officers, we have to kind of look at the balance between achieving development and on brownfield sites in a sustainable location, against trying to have that amenity for existing residents but also future residents. So clearly where there are and this is a national issue with properties whereby they're being changed, so permitted development rights offices to residential, and there's been a lot in the planning press about the quality of those, and the government is trying to make some steps in changing that. I think this is miles away from that type of development, but we have had recent appeals that have gone against us. The Naseby Hotel is one where a new tenure has come in for different type of development, more like kind of student living, where we did refuse that, but inspectors have deemed that is an acceptable use in that location, and therefore we run the risk of having those conditions and any kind of Section 106 benefits that can offset some of this development taken away from us, because the inspectors will decide on their own merits. that's kind of all I'll say. But there is a very fine balance in terms of bringing forward good quality development, which I think this is, and but also recognizing that not every flat is going to have a car parking space, and refusing that type of development, which is going to cause multiple problems. I mean, the other thing I'd say is that we can't be delivering planning on the basis of who we think is going to go into these properties and how they're going to be operated. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is to approve. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? So Councillor Titcombe proposing, Councillor Adams seconds. So Eden, if you could do the vote for us, please.
Certainly, Chair. So this is for the proposal to approve. Councillor Thurland.
Against.
Councillor Titcombe.
For, excuse me.
Councillor Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Councillor O'Hara.
Didn't hear that, Councillor.
Against.
Councillor Howells.
For.
And Councillor Morton.
For.
That is 5 for and 3 against, Chair. So that's approved.
So that application is approved. Thank you. So on to item 5.3, 29 Newland Street, Braybrook. Is that you, Angela?
It's me, thank you, Chair. Just to start, that we've had some, there is an update on this application. We've received amended plans, which have changed the materials on the rear extension from timber cladding to painted brick to match the existing property. Also to confirm that all the roof lights are to be conservation area type roof lights, and there'll be no new roof lights in the existing front roof slope. Also, just to confirm, we've had no comments from the Environment Agency, but due to the size of the extensions, it's classed as minor extensions, not needing a flood risk assessment, so standing up ice applies. And just to confirm that says the first floor levels to be no lower than the existing dwelling, and the application does comply with that, the standing advice. So could I have the next slide, please? This site is on the edge of Braybrook. It's a semi-detached property towards the end of the built-up development along Newland Street. The site lies within the conservation area. Could I have the next slide, please? The proposal is for a single-storey extension to the rear and a second-storey extension on top of an existing utility room on the side elevation. Next slide, please. This is the existing property. So if you look at the front elevation at the top, the application property is to the left, and it's from the third chimney from the left, and it's that side. Also on the rear elevation, again from the third chimney to the right is the property. The side elevation to the southwest is of the neighbouring property and just shows the two-storey element just to the right, and the side elevation in the northeast just shows the existing single-storey extension to the side, which they're proposing to extend above. Next slide, please. So on the southeast elevation, you can see the single-storey extension just below the eaves level, and on the northeast elevation, you can see the roof lights. That's the side elevation, and also the first floor above an existing utility on the side. On the northwest elevation, as you can see, there's just one roof light proposed, and that's in the first floor extension. The rest of the property on the northwest is to remain as is. On the southeast elevation, again, with the two roof lights are proposed in the existing roof slope and a roof light in the rear of the extension. So basically the single story rear extension is to provide a dining area off the kitchen, and the first floor extension above the existing utilities to provide an ensuite to an existing bedroom. In that existing bedroom on the first floor, there's 2 first floor windows which are proposed to be blocked up, obviously replaced with the 2 new roof lights in the existing roof slope. There is a window in the side elevation of that room, so there will be enough light into there. Next slide, please. This is the photograph of the existing property to the left, which is the painted, white painted brickwork property to the left, and that's the front elevation. Next slide, please. This is the rear. You can see the existing 2-story gable projection, and the new single story will be to the right of that. And of course, there's the existing utility brick, reclaimed brick, which is to be extended above to the right. Next slide, please. Again, this is a view from the front as well. I think that's the last slide. Is there another slide? No, thank you. So basically, we've had no objections to the application, and it's brought before the committee because the applicant is a relative of an existing councillor. We feel the proposals are in keeping with the scale and character of the existing property. It doesn't affect any existing residential properties due to the distances involved. There's no parking issues because they're not actually proposing any additional bedroom space. There'll be the same number of bedrooms, and you can see there is some parking which won't be affected. So with that, Chairman, we recommend an approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Councillors, anybody? No? Okay, so the recommendation is approval. Do I have a proposer and a seconder?
I propose, Chair.
And Councillor Mitchell, second. So Eden, if you could do the vote, please.
Certainly, Chair. This is on the recommendation to approve. Councillor Thurland.
For.
Councillor Titcombe.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Councillor O'Hara.
For, please.
Councillor Howes.
For.
And Councillor Morton.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair. 4.
Excellent. So that application is approved. And that concludes the business for tonight. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.